Here's some footage from our first training session on how to put a toy in a basket. For this behavior, you'll want your dog to know a hold, a retrieve, and a drop. You're going to need a dog, a toy, a basket, some yummy treats, and a clicker if you want. To begin, I'm going to encourage the dog to put their nose in the basket by placing a treat in and marking the nose going into the basket. So here, I'm tossing a treat in the basket to encourage his nose in. When that nose goes in, I mark with the clicker, and then his reward is that treat at the bottom of the basket. To up the criteria a little bit, I'm going to start to encourage his nose into the basket without that treat being tossed in. So the treat is going after the nose goes in the basket. So I'm marking and rewarding by popping a treat into the basket. And I'm using a little hand signal as well. So here I'm just encouraging his nose in, mark when it goes in, and then reward in the basket. And I started to move it around the room as well, just to encourage him to be curious. And I'm upping my criteria too. So I want that nose properly in the basket. And I'm rewarding into the basket as well, just to keep encouraging that nose to go in there.
Yes, very good.
The next stage was to get him into that toy. So he already knows the basics of a hold, but here we hadn't rehearsed it yet today. So you can see that he's a bit more interested in the treats than he is in the toy. So I need to do a bit of work here. So I get up and try and encourage him to grab that toy. Once he does, I ask him to drop. And I've put that basket right under his nose, so when he drops, he's going to drop it in the basket. So here's a hold, drop, and because it's kind of in the basket, I'm going to mark and reward that one. It's not exactly what I'm looking for, but right now, my criteria is just him dropping it near or kind of in the basket, so that's totally fine. And then that second time, he drops it in perfectly. So we continued a few repetitions of having the basket right below Benny here. So when he's holding and dropping, it's more likely that he's going to drop it right into the basket. So I'm setting him up for success here by making it easy for him to drop that toy right into the basket. And my criteria has become that I want it right in the basket. So if he had dropped it on the side, I wouldn't have marked and rewarded that. I would have waited until he gets it right in the basket. Then we up the criteria a little bit more, and I'm having him move towards the basket a bit more. So moving towards it, dropping, mark, reward.
So good. That was awesome.
So the last element in this training session was to have him retrieve at a distance and then come over to the basket and drop it in, which he did a really nice job with here. And I just had him do it the once because it was really successful and because it was a longer training session and I didn't want to push it too much. So we went back to some hold and drop with the basket close by, just so we're ending on a high note. I always like to end my training sessions on a high note. And if we were going to continue working on this behavior, I would start my next session with a few of those hold and drop into the basket, and then focus the session on the distance, so the retrieve at a distance and then bringing it back to the basket. So here are all the steps we went through in this training session. You can pause the video here and follow along. And my main piece of advice for this session or any training session that you're doing with your dog, reduce the criteria when necessary. So that's when if they're maybe feeling frustrated or neither of you guys are quite getting it, reduce the criteria, make it easy for you both, and then finish on a high note. So finishing on something you know your dog is going to achieve, they're going to get the best result, and so you both are walking away from the session feeling good. If you found this video useful, give me a like, share the video if you want on social media. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, or you can get in touch with me via EncoreDogs.com or also on Facebook and Instagram as Encore Dogs. Thanks so much and happy training!